Good morning. It's not raining, but it's a bit too early for me to go and play golf, and my podcasting gear is still set up, so I'm going to tell you about this guitar, which is the hand-built prototype for my signature body style. The way I made this guitar was to start with two pieces of wood, which I bought from a specialist guitar wood supplier. Glued those together to make a single slab. I then used my CNC machine to route out the neck pocket, pickup pockets, and mark the mounting holes for the bridge. I'd have to manually do all the drilling because my CNC, combination of the machine, the tools I had at the time, the skill level I had at the time wouldn't allow me to actually bore those holes. So it was literally a big slab with a neck pocket hole and just some marks on it, and the pickup holes in it was what I took off the machine. I then used the neck pocket hole to line up some of my other guitars with the plates that hold the necks on, to draw copy some curves that I thought worked for me in terms of were nice places to sit on my leg or to have my arm rest. And I tried to not, I didn't take the whole outline of any one guitar, but particularly if that guitar was the one that felt nicest sat on my leg, then that was the one that got traced for this curve here, for example. Once I'd got those marks, which wasn't honestly very many, I then set about kind of joining them up in what I hoped would be a fairly pleasant shape, but also removing as much material as possible to make the body as small as possible. Because if you remember, my problem was I couldn't wear any of my existing guitars and play stood up because I thought at the time because my shoulder wasn't strong enough. So this was what I ended up with after. I've cut a long story very short there. So after tracing it in with pen or drawing with pencil, I had to cut it out, which I used a reciprocating jigsaw tool, and then I bolted on a bit of 2x4, which I very roughly shaped to be about the dimensions of the kind of neck I was planning to put on it. And I sat in my backyard in my overalls, pretending to hold it to play, and then shaping these contours on this part where my arm rests to get a comfortable slope there for when I was sat down. And then I, much earlier than you might think, put these strap buttons on and wore it stood up to shape another contour for which is more comfortable for where I need want my arm to be when I'm playing stood up. And obviously I did like the usual things you would do of a rib cut, and I shaved a bunch of weight out of the thickness of the body here. See what would happen. I've shaved a bunch actually out of there. That slims down as well in that dimension. So I tried to, without knowing exactly how far I could go, so not going in any sense too far, but I tried to slim out as much. Any wood I was confident I wouldn't regret having removed later got taken out in that process. There are a couple of other features of my design that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. I haven't seen anywhere else. I don't know if anyone has already done them. So I find this upper horn area on all the commercially available guitars I've ever seen a bit of a wasted opportunity. It ends up being just this big bulky thing that's only there to hold the strap button. I thought it could be a little bit more useful than that, so I shaped this one, modeled it on a kind of knife handle aim ergonomically to be a handle for the guitar. So you can pick this guitar up by the handle. It actually has a handle, and it's here. Obviously, I think the Ibanez Gem has a sort of handle hole here. I don't know how real that is with the finger spacing that they've got on it. It looks unrealistic. It's a cool design feature, but it doesn't look like a usable handle, whereas this was consciously designed to try and be a usable handle. The other thing I've not seen anyone else do is my humbuckers screws go in the body from the backside, which means I don't need pick-up rings for the humbuckers, and I also didn't need to drill out the mounting threads in order to put a wood screw through them. So yeah, that was my original feature of this. As you can maybe see, I slimmed down the neck joint heel quite a lot. That meant at the time, with the experience and technology I had, I went back to using a plate for this join, and because I wasn't comfortable with only having like 3 or 4 millimeters of wood between a recessed cup washer and the actual neck, because I'd have had to source really small but fat wood screws, which is relatively hard to do. Bearing in mind, I was doing this in the pandemic when I couldn't just go to the hardware store and poke around and see what they had. What else is notable? This neck is really nice. It's I didn't make the neck. I specified what it should be, so it's got inlays to match the body finish, but it's made by Warmouth Guitars, who were at the time just down the road from me. So it seemed pretty dumb for me to make my own neck when I wasn't actually trying to do anything innovative in the area of necks. And I live nearly next door to one of the best aftermarket neck makers in the market. Incidentally, if you did want to do a guitar like your own custom body shape for some reason, Warmouth Guitars will sell you the thing I started from, which is a slab with a neck pocket and the pickup mountings and the bridge mounting. If you ask them to make that for you, they'll do it, and a suitable neck to go on it, and then you can draw your own outline, cut it out, do all the finishing work and the wiring, and you'll have your own guitar that's completely unique to you. So I spoke about my T-style guitar, about leaving intentional defects in the body so that I would feel comfortable playing it, even though it put vast amounts of work into making it. I made the same choice here. So there's some intentional scarring around here. I intentionally did not finish the job of chiseling out, smoothing that gradient out. I mean, I smoothed it to where it's there's nothing there to catch on your clothes or your fingers, but it just doesn't look the ultimate imperfection. It would have been easier to I want to be clear about the difference between laziness and this design choice. It would have been less effort for me to make this neat than it was to intentionally leave it messy, but make it so it doesn't have any way of catching on the player or causing any harm. Similarly, but another thing I wanted to do with this is leave a trace of all of the techniques that were used to make it, even if that meant it was less aesthetically perfect. So I've left again the vast amount of effort required to get it to where these marks are visible but don't actually, you can't even feel them if you run your hands over it, but you can see some like a mark that you would only get from using a jigsaw to cut out this curve. You can find marks that look like unintentional imprints of rasps or files, or where someone has used an orbital sander and then not used the fine grit in enough places. That wasn't done that way. It was done by making the body perfect and then deliberately going back with those tools and putting those marks back in. So a high effort way of getting a guitar that looks badly made, but my pride won't let me leave that unstated, I guess. Now let's talk about the electronics. The this cover plate here is 3D printed. That was new this year, as are the knobs, which are also 3D printed. I've got the usual output jack, 3-way switch, volume, tone, and then another 3-way switch, which I'll talk about in a moment. But other than that, it's pretty conventional. The pickups are humbuckers. As you can see, there's no plate on the back, and there's nothing, no plate on the front, and this is a solid piece of wood. So you might be wondering how you wire that up. Well, how you connect this pickup in the neck to the control plate. What you do is you, without the neck installed, you basically drill from this end of the guitar straight down the body to connect this pickup cavity to this pickup cavity. Now, when I did that, I made an error in my technique for doing that mechanical operation, and so there should be a bit of wood between this pickup cavity and the neck cavity, and there isn't, because it tore out when I was doing that drilling. The way to do it, which I should have thought of at the time but didn't, would have been to drill a slightly larger hole in the piece of wood between the neck cavity and this pickup cavity, and then use a smaller bit than that to drill through this long channel between the pickup cavities. And by doing that, I wouldn't have been putting any stress on this thin bit of wood here during the drilling operation, because it nearly lasted. It was only at the very end that tore out, and it could have been avoided. Anyway, electrically, the pickups are Seymour Duncan P rails. You can look up the specs of those if it really interests you. But they are a hybrid pickup. They have some amount of character of a P90, which is what you heard in the intro music there. They have some an alternate personality, which is a very weak sounding single coil rail style pickup, and they have a third personality, which is where both of those things are active, and it's a full humbucker. I built this hoping that those three would sound very distinct, but in part because the orientation I've put them in, I think I don't get a lot of tonal difference between the rail pickup and the P90. There's just quite a big volume difference. But I will demo the three sounds for you now on a open G chord. So this is the P90 in the bridge. We're into a crunchy amp. This is the humbucker sound. If you can hear a difference there that you can't attribute to how intensely, variations in how I've picked, I would be amazed. I personally can't tell as the player. And then here is the single coil from the bridge. So while there's a bit of a difference there, what we're hearing, I think, is primarily that single coil is pushing the amp a bit less. go to the neck, we're still on single coil. Here's the G again. So I tried to strum those all equally. It is questionable whether I succeeded. Into this amp, there's more. It's probably more noticeable if I play single notes. Because with single notes, what you're hearing there is the rail pickup played at kind of normal intensity doesn't push the amp into that kind of distortion regime. And on the P90, which I'll switch back to now, you can hear that note's got a bit of fizz on the top of it where the amp is overdriving. And then on the humbucker mode, it should be fractionally louder again. Now, of course, you could get most of that effect by fiddling with the volume knob or by changing your picking technique. So you can legitimately question like whether it's worthwhile to put this kind of pickup in the guitar. If you accept that with them oriented this way round, there's not going to be a huge tonal difference, but it is going to give you as kind of a preset on the guitar for a clean-ish sound when you're in the rails mode and a pushed sound when you're in P90s mode. And if that's musically useful to you, then it might be worth thinking about doing this. I'm personally not sufficiently impressed with this to have wanted to put it in any of my other guitars. And as you might recall from my review of the PRS SE NF3, I am a bit of a snob about the getting the tone control to work for a clean amp, and it's really impossible to build a passive tone circuit that will sound great or as good as it could do for any one of these pickup voicings when it has to deal with all three. So at the moment I have this set up for where into a clean amp on the P90 neck, the tone circuit is doing, for me, a good job, but I don't like its sound on the rails really at all. And it's okay, but not great on the humbucker. I mean, to be honest, I don't find I'd like to use the humbucker voice on this guitar very often because if I really want that humbucker tone, I've got guitars with humbuckers on I can use instead, or at least I do now. Anyway, let's talk a small amount about whether this worked. Did this allow me to play stood up in comfort? The answer is it did to some extent. It helped enough to make me believe in the project, but it didn't cure all my problems. So although this is lighter than that T-style guitar because it's been slimmed down in a variety of ways, it is still very solid, and it is still an alder body, and it is therefore like it's light for a solid body electric guitar, but it is not light in kind of general, it's not extremely light in those terms, and it's not like it wasn't putting no pressure on my shoulder joint. So, but because it had helped, and because I thought, okay, if I were to do this with CNC machining, I could route really big holes and remove vast amounts more wood and still be confident that I'd end up with something that was going to work for me ergonomically. I thought I'd do that. And so the next guitar I show you will be one that was CNC machined. But I think I should tell you at least the first half of how I got to that guitar body in this video, which is I took thousands of pictures of this guitar in various orientations and then fed it into some structure from Motion software that works out what the 3D shape of an object is from given various images of it. In order to get that to work, I had to paint it in a uniform matte color that would get picked up well enough by the camera. So this is not the first finish that this guitar's had. It had a matte grey finish at one point in order to be 3D captured, and that was before I'd even put a real neck on it or the wiring or anything. It's when it was a bare body. And so I do have a big complicated STL file that would in theory let you print out or recreate this. But what I did with that was to reverse engineer it and work out like what shape is this what shape is this rib carve that I should take away from the body to make it there, what angle is this slope here, what angle is this sloped region here. So there's actually, you can't probably see it, but there's a facet line here in the wood. So I've got that part for when I'm sat down, and this part is optimized for when I'm stood up, and they're different slopes. And then I had various other design criteria and other things I'd noticed when I was making this. So one of the things I actually dislike on essentially all commercial guitars is that when you're sat down, they either have a sharp trailing edge on the body that digs into your leg a bit and creates a kind of hot spot, or if that's rounded over, they're all such highly polished and smooth surfaces that it tends to slide a bit on your clothing, on your leg, depending on what clothing you wear and like what angle you're holding your legs at. But it limits how you can sit and have the guitar be stable. So with this finish, which is a oil finish, it doesn't get that as slippery as the highly polished car type paint jobs that you get on commercially made guitars. But I did notice that before as I was sanding and smoothing this out, it actually got slightly less comfortable to sit on my leg. It would more prone to slipping around. So that's one of the things I decided to factor into my production process for my other guitars, that I wanted it to sit on my leg and stay there, and maybe that meant that totally smoothing that out to a abstract level of perfection is not the way to go. But again, I'll show you what I did about that in a future episode. But yeah, this is my first and last, for now, handmade prototype guitar body. I am very happy with it as an instrument. Proud of what I created, and I'm also proud of the partially mechanized ones that would come as a result of this design, but I'll show you those in future episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Cheerio.